Glenys
now. Thank you. My view would be somewhat different from what you've just heard, because I certainly believe that in the world we live in now and the world we will live in for many years, the realities of economics, politics, globalisation and interdependence, of war and peace, mean that multilateral international action to combat poverty, want and chronic disadvantage is absolutely vital. Indeed, it's essential, because the challenges of globalisation, of course, go beyond individual countries, even the most powerful of those countries. I think central to this evening's discussion is the reality that foreign policy, trade policy, climate change policies and global power are dispersed. The UK is therefore obliged to reflect on what exactly needs to be done, both here and on the continent of Europe, to ensure that we deal with what is a radically changed global landscape. Open Europe, I think, should grasp the idea that if we are to influence the European Union, contemplating less engagement but rather is an option. Rather, we should be seeking to increase the opportunities and the influence, more importantly, which is offered to the UK through our membership of the European Union. Indeed, I would argue very strongly that no other multilateral agency has the range of resources which are available to the European Union. It surely makes sense for Britain, in our national interest, to join efforts made by the Commission, a multilateral donor, because the Union has the capacity, the remit and the legitimacy to promote global prosperity and security. And clearly, in this task, the Commission needs strong bilateral relationships with Member State partners, like Britain. As signatories, we are committed to the objectives clearly set down in the Lisbon Treaty. And that main objective, as far as our work is concerned, is to eradicate poverty. And that decision and those agreements were made and reached by 27 democracies in Europe. And the agreement was to address the individual and thematic interests of Member States. And the consensus naturally reflects the political and the geographic priorities of individual countries, including our country, the United Kingdom. Because of our EU membership, we share partnership with 78 African, Caribbean and Pacific countries, the ACP, and with Asia and Latin America, the European neighbourhood and the African continent. It also gives us influence in parts of the world where DFID does not work. In recent crisis, there has been a very positive outcome of our EU membership in Haiti, in Côte d'Ivoire, and in the Arab Spring countries, where our connection with those crises was generally through our connection with the European Union and our membership of the European Union. These examples prove the positive effect of member state lobbying and the value of ECHO, the humanitarian agency working in Brussels, and the Commission's political engagement. Other multilaterals, like the World Bank, which was just mentioned, and other development banks, have the financial resources, but have much narrower remits. They have, for instance, no voice on trade or on foreign and security policy. And the UN has the political role, but not the capacity to distribute on the same scale. That is why the Commission's Agenda for Change, with its 11 points, which includes more emphasis on human rights and democracy and good governance, which nobody surely could object to, and also investment in agricultural development, provides an opportunity, I believe, for the European Union to increase its global focus and indeed increase its effectiveness. Open Europe talks of trade policy and calls for agricultural reform. And I have to ask, how can we make a difference to these critical issues and areas of policy if we are not at the table as full European Union participants? To influence, we have to be in. Frankly, there is no such thing as outfluence, which is what is being recommended here. I'm afraid there are no pick and mix options for membership of the European Union, no half in, half out options. Our agreements to the Lisbon Treaty means that we are committed to fulfilling the task of combating hunger and poverty collectively and managed by the External Action Service. And on transparency and accountability, over the last 10 years, we've seen remarkable improvements, and it's just not acceptable to accuse the Commission of widespread fraud and corruption. Open Europe should understand and acknowledge the level of scrutiny undertaken both by the Court of Auditors and by the European Parliament. I can vouch for that, since I was very involved from the outset in the scrutiny of the Parliament, working with the Development Cooperation Instrument known as DCI. I can certainly confirm that there is no case that can be made of accusing the Commission of in some way fraudulently moving money around, which seems to be what some people believe has been the case. We had working groups in the Parliament, we scrutinised what was going on, and in the Joint Parliamentary Assembly, which I chaired, we instigated programmes which involved the parliaments of the ACP having access to country strategy papers, which the Commission were very happy for them to have, and neither the Court of Auditors nor the Parliament have found any evidence of any diversion of funds. However, the EC, I do think, could usefully look at developing online country-by-country details of delivery, disbursement and impact of aid. And on trade, the Commission also acts on behalf of Member States in all negotiations, which means that the UK exercises essential influence as part of a bloc of 27 Member States. Surely everyone in this room knows that in the Doha Development Round, the UK was represented by the Trade Commissioners, and also the European Parliament was there, and there was no individual member state apart from representatives there to discuss with the Commission. In addition, in this and other areas of the development round has proved, the EU understands that individual country impact will continue to decline. All individual country impact will decline because of the influence of the so-called BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. As this influence continues to grow, so it's important that individual countries join together in order to be more effective. So, as Simon Maxwell has said, the cards in Europe's hand look better by the day, and we must encourage ambitious play. 64% of EDF, ACP and DCI money goes to low-income countries. I would absolutely contradict the statements that were made, which state that the situation is otherwise. And another factor to discuss in this debate is the new geography of poverty. New challenges include what Open Europe has not acknowledged, that now there is a clear position on the need to work in middle-income countries, simply because the fact is we know now that most of the world's poorest people live in middle-income countries. 90% of the world's poor lived in low-income countries 20 years ago, but now 75% of the world's poorest people live in middle-income countries like India, Mexico and other countries. Of course, work goes on in least developed countries like Sierra Leone and Congo and other countries, but also in countries like Kosovo, which is mentioned in the report. Kosovo, quoted by Open Europe as an unsuitable recipient of aid, is classified by the World Bank as a low-income country where 17% of the population is extremely poor. Surely Open Europe also agrees that supporting countries like Kosovo, there is also the matter of that being important to all of us in Europe because of security and illegal immigration issues. That has to be the case. It has to be said too that making comparisons between DFID and the EU just is untenable, since the remit of the European Union, the remit of the Commission, is very, very different indeed. Meanwhile, DFID, as we heard in its own review, commends the Commission's commitment to the Paris Agenda on aid effectiveness and donor coordination. Also, its budget is not tied to policy conditionalities, and it can engage in co-financing arrangements with other donors. The EDF was also given a clean bill of health, and the Commission budget was described as adequate. 85% of EDF funds are spent in low-income countries, and 40% of EDF funds go to Commonwealth countries. So surely, again, the UK has an interest in promoting those relationships. So in conclusion, the global financial and food crisis, climate change, unmet aid commitments, which is a member state issue, outdated global governance structures, and China's emergence as a major player in the international aid pose challenges and opportunities for development policy. The UK, for many years, has punched well above its weight, and I hope that this will persist. We must continue. As a country, a very important country as far as development is concerned, we must continue to play a catalytic role and understand that the interdependence of our world through trade, investment, information and much else means that no country is an island.